Remedy is one of the most featured developers on my channel, and for a good number of reasons. With Remedy turning 25 recently, I thought I would explain why I love this developer so much. Despite some mistakes or choices I disagree with, I have always held Remedy in high regard, and I still hold them up as one of my favourite developers. Yeah, that's right, just because I didn't like Quantum Break doesn't mean I suddenly dislike Remedy. Anyway, one of the many things Remedy does incredibly well is the video game aspect of their video games. One thing I've always noticed about Remedy is that their gameplay is rather straightforward and simplistic, but is highly addicting. Max Payne popularized the third-person shooter genre with its shooting mechanics and bullet time. The mechanics themselves are easy to get a hang of, but you are constantly put through new and interesting challenges in the levels that encourage you to use your weapons and bullet time in different ways. Not to mention that each level in the game can be played in numerous different ways, adding to replay value. I've spent hours and hours with these games purely because of how fun the games are to play. Alan Wake isn't considered a survival horror game by Remedy, but they would be lying if they said it wasn't inspired by those types of games, at least in the gameplay department. Alan Wake's gameplay is once again very simple. You fight off people taking over by the darkness with guns. However, Alan Wake has a unique mechanic of the flashlight. The Taken are protected by the darkness, and the darkness needs to be flushed away with the light before you can attack them. This adds to the gameplay because it means the player has to make strategical decisions on what enemies they're taking out. There isn't too much enemy variety in the game, but there is enough to make the player think about which enemy to take out first. Whether it be the standard Taken that throw axes at you from a distance, big Taken, yada yada. The flashlight itself is technically infinite as it recharges, but it doesn't recharge fast enough for you to reliably use it without using batteries. So using the flashlight becomes a case of resource management. In fact, the guns are similar in this aspect too. Alan Wake has some different guns and equipment for you to kill the Taken, and so you have to choose what weapons is effective for different situations. However, while ammo isn't exactly scarce, it also isn't very common either, and thus you can run out if you don't use your tools effectively. Sorry for the long tangent, but I do think this adds as to why I love Alan Wake's gameplay so much. The mechanics themselves are super simple, but the way the game is designed encourages critical thinking with the player and with resource management and enemy management. What I do like is also the dodge mechanic. Every attack in Alan Wake is dodgeable and highly telegraphed, and so if you take damage, then it's your fault. If you're good enough, you could go through the entire game without taking damage. Besides, the slow-mo dodge, if you dodge at the right time, not only looks cool, but gives you a couple extra seconds to plan out what you're doing next. Quantum Break is, well, I already discussed that. Control's gameplay is interesting in that you only have one gun, but it can change into 5 different forms, although really only 2 of them are useful, and that you have supernatural abilities such as floating and telekinesis. I do plan to do a video on Control at some point, so I don't want to talk about the gameplay too much here, but despite some issues I have with enemy and weapon design, the game is still extremely fun. Shooting enemies and using telekinesis to launch objects into them is extremely satisfying, and you can use your abilities in creative ways. And the game does encourage an aggressive playstyle, since the only way to gain more health is to kill more enemies. Although I do think the game could have done with difficulty settings, since I think Control is a bit too easy, but it's still a kick-ass game nonetheless. Remedy are really good at making fun games to play with a simple toolset, and it's one of the reasons I love their games. Of course, I do love games with deep and complex mechanics, but I'm also a fan of more simplistic games too, especially when they're done as well as Remedy does them. Another aspect of Remedy that I adore is their stories and their style of storytelling. The reason why Max Payne's story is so enjoyable is not only the story and characters itself, but the way it's told. The comic panel cutscenes add plenty of style to the game and allow the dialogue, as well as Max's monologues, to be paced appropriately. For example, this cutscene in Max Payne 1, where Max confronts Vinny.
Gognitti ran out of steam in a dead-end alley with steam boiling out of the sewer grates like all the fires of hell were burning high beneath us. It was shakedown time. Where's Lupino?
Screw you!
Bad start, Vinny.
Police brutality!
I rate pretty high on that.
You can't just hurt me in cold blood?
Just keep telling yourself that. Listen good, Candyman. I'm not gonna be anybody's fall guy. I want to know where your boss is hiding. There was no glory in this. I hadn't asked for this crap. Trouble had come to me in big dark swarms. The good and the just were like gold dust in the city. I had no illusions. I was not one of them. I was no hero. Just me and the gun and the crook. My options had decreased to a singular course.
I'll tell you, just don't hurt me no more. Lupino's at Ragnarok, the nightclub. Book me, take me, hold me to the freaking jail, just don't hurt me.
Your rights will be read at your funeral.
Each key moment, from Max striking fear into Vinny, to Vinny's panic, to Max's flashback, to the gun click, to Vinny finally giving up the info, all these moments are given the proper time to breathe thanks to each panel specifying those moments. Not that it would be impossible to pace this scene without the panels, but it certainly does help and adds style to the game. Not to mention that this makes Max Payne's cutscenes timeless. Even though Sam Lake's face in these cutscenes are wacky as hell, the cutscenes still look just as great and are just as entertaining nearly 20 years later. What is cool is that Max Payne 2 kept the comic panels, and the comic art in this game looks fantastic. There are still comics that get released today that don't have art as good as this. Max Payne 2 does use more in-game cutscenes than the first game, but the majority is still comic panels, and the in-game cutscenes are used for moments that work better in motion. Alan Wake's storytelling is also pretty stellar. Alan is a writer, and there are manuscript pages left all over Bright Falls. What is cool is that these pages all tell future events of the game within the context of Alan's exaggerated writing, which not only adds mystery as to what the words on the page mean, but it is also a really satisfying payoff to read about an event and then see it happen. It also adds to Alan's character and shows how his mindset works when creating fiction and how dangerous it is when his fiction becomes reality. Quantum Break, let's not get into that. Control is on the weaker side in this case. Once again, I don't want to talk too much about this game for now, but I am sort of mixed on the storytelling in this game. The world of Control is really interesting, and I always wanted to explore more of the Federal Bureau of Control, but the story itself is kind of dragged out a bit. The story itself is really cool with a lot of mystery, and the ending of the game is genuinely one of the coolest I've ever played, but the story in the game only starts to matter towards the end. For most of the game, the story is just the protagonist Jesse getting from one location to another, with not much going on. Luckily, there are plenty of collectibles and characters to talk to, and it's fun to find out more about the goings-on in this place. Jessie herself isn't Remedy's best character, but I still did like her, and I related to her in the fact that she's extremely powerful but still has a sense of doubt as to whether or not she can actually push back the hiss. She works well as a protagonist, but considering this is Remedy, I was still hoping for a bit more depth with her and the story itself, but I still loved Control's world nonetheless, even if it is a rip-off of the SCP Foundation. Remedy are amazing storytellers. Their stories do have some issues from time to time, but the way they're told, the characters, and the cheesiness of them is enough to keep you entertained the entire time. Sam Lake deserves a lot of credit for the work he puts into writing these games, but all of Remedy does an amazing job at it. Another thing I love is that Remedy's stories are taken seriously, but they're told in over-the-top and crazy ways, which allows for some great humor, such as the fourth wall break in Max Payne, the Old Gods of Asgard concert in Alan Wake, or the Ashtray Maze in Control. Speaking of which, let's talk about the soundtrack in Remedy's games. Max Payne's soundtrack is amazing. Not only the gameplay tracks that hype up the action, but also the story tracks, which perfectly capture the neo-noir tone of the game, with their dark nature. Alan Wake's soundtrack is varied and has an appropriate track for any situation that calls for a certain emotion. Control's soundtrack isn't too memorable, but it does have the coolest song, like, ever. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about Poets of the Fall. This band has been in most of Remedy's games since Max Payne 2. Marco Saristo, the singer, was actually doing work for Remedy before the band started. He voiced the Address Unknown episodes in Max Payne, and was the comic stand-in for Vladimir Lem. The band started first when Max Payne 2 was in development, and their first single, Late Goodbye, was made for the game.
And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye, such a late goodbye. And we keep driving into the night. It's a late goodbye.
Ever since then, Poets of the Fall have not only become a successful band in their own right, but have continued to collaborate with Remedy. Ever since I first played Max Payne 2, I've been a big fan of this band. Every song they've made has been awesome, and it's cool that they keep working with Remedy. My favourite part is that they do the music for Old Gods of Asgard, which I just find funny. They're playing a fictional band in Alan Wake. Remedy's music as a whole is fantastic for capturing all the moods you feel whilst playing the game, and the fact that they keep working with one of the coolest bands ever just adds to how awesome their games are. But it isn't just the work Remedy produces which makes me and many others love them. It's also the developer itself. Remedy constantly reminds its fans of how much they mean to them and constantly joke around with their games.
Hello, this is Sam Lake from Remedy. Max Payne 2 turns 15 years old today. Just wanted to say thank you to all of you who have played the game. Thank you for all the nice comments along the way.
You guys are really, really important to us. You are a big reason why all the hard work we put into these experiences makes sense. And as a token of our appreciation, we have created an awesome Alan Wake package that includes all the games so far, the collector's items, and some never seen before materials that we've been saving for a special moment.
Wanted to take a moment to wish you all
happy holidays. Happy holidays. And great new year.
In fact, recently, we took a step back and realized something. We enjoy coffee even more than we enjoy making games. So, it's my pleasure to announce that we are changing our company focus to that. Coffee. Making coffee. Cheers. So good. Never drank any coffee in my life.
Xbox One's most anticipated new franchise redefines living room entertainment. It blends fierce, time-powered action with a gripping storyline, fusing together a AAA game and a top-of-the-line live action show. To create Quantum's unique action, Remedy, the creators of Bullet Time, bring time manipulation to the player's fingertips like never before.
But probably the best aspect of Remedy is their fanbase. Remedy has a wonderful fanbase, full of creative and passionate people that always love to discuss and share their love for the games. I mean, some of the mods for Max Payne 1 and 2 are a bit wacky, but they have added endless replayability to the games. I myself have met some wonderful people in this community, such as Jaden from The Sudden Stop or Patrick from PainReactor.com. I've loved talking about Remedy's games for the past 2 years, and it's lovely that these people have been constant support for me and support within the community for years. I mean, PainReactor.com is older than I am, which is funny to think about. Anyway, Remedy's community is just a really lovely place to be in, full of awesome people who share the same passion for these games. In conclusion, Remedy Entertainment are just fucking awesome. They're not perfect, as I said, but what they do right, they do a tremendous job. Their games have addicting gameplay, great stories and characters, and really awesome music, and the developer itself is full of awesome people and has helped create one of the best gaming communities. So, here's to Remedy's 25th anniversary. I love Remedy and their games, and I look forward to what's next.